What's up, everyone? We are diving back into the multiverse today for another epic. Which is What If Naruto X Harem X Samui X YUGITOX FUU Part Naruto X Harem Part 4. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, the young ninja Naruto sprinted towards the gate of Kumo, his heart racing with excitement and anticipation for what was to come. With his keen senses and lightning-fast reflexes, he was the first to arrive at the gate. Behind him, Darui followed suit, his muscular frame leaned against a nearby tree. As the two waited for the rest of their team to arrive, Darui decided this was the perfect opportunity to finally speak with his blonde pupil. Darui abruptly said, "What are you not telling me, Naruto?" "Darui-sensei, what do you mean? Pardon me if I'm harsh, but the Raikage informed me you already know about your burden." The elite Jonin noted Naruto's careless response. "Yes. I do. Look, I want you to know I'm not one of those jerks. I actually like you, kiddo, and even I can tell the difference between glass and water, but I only see you as Naruto. And don't tell the others, but I think you're my second favorite student," Darui confessed with a warm smile. "Second favorite?" Naruto exclaimed, smirking. "Geez, I wonder who is the lucky one to be the first, possibly a certain Omoi," he speculated. "Despite that, Darui-sensei, you're a great instructor," Naruto responded. "I'm not really a good man, kiddo. Specifically, I'm not really a good son. After my father died, I had a disagreement with mom. We argued a lot, and eventually, it led me to leave the village for a while to pursue my own personal interest. But to this day, I still remember how hurt mom was when I left," Darui said, his voice tinged with guilt. "I see. Do you have any regrets?" Naruto said. "Of course, kiddo," Darui remarked, "but it wasn't all for nothing. I learned how to use black lightning, that alone put me in the S rank. Plus, I managed to earn my reputation as one of Kumo's elite ninjas. Hell, I even have a 55 million Ryo bounty on my head." 55 million? Who did you piss off?" Naruto exclaimed, surprised to learn that his sensei was most likely in every bounty hunter's bingo book. "Ha ha ha, Naruto, it's a black market bounty. Plus, I've made a lot of enemies over the years, so anyone's guess who put it up right now. But, I'm a bit proud, huh? The more I'm worth, the more badass I am, right?" Darui stated with a smug grin. With a deadpan expression, Naruto said, "Why do I believe that bounty could get you in trouble someday?" With a laid-back tone, Darui remarked, "Oh, come on, kiddo, you're just being worried. We're here. Sorry we're late," exclaimed Yugito, panting as she and Omoi approached the village gate. With a heavy groan, Omoi muttered, "Apparently, my mother won't stop worrying about the potential hazards beyond the village. What a nuisance. Well, you're here now, so that's all that counts. The land of tea is a one-day journey, but let's see if we can get there sooner. Let's go," Darui stated as he led his group out of Kumo's gates. "Yeah, finally. A mission outside the village," said Yugito, relieved they had finally left their home. Omoi muttered tiredly, "Disastrous, it's going to be a long week. Are you thrilled, Naruto-kun? This is our first trip out of the village," Yugito said of her blonde companion. "You bet," Naruto teased his lover, "and don't worry, I'll keep you all safe, and I'll personally make sure to keep you warm at night." Yugito blushed profusely as a result of this, pondering how he could keep her warm. They then started their journey to the tea land. As the members of Team 10 made their way to their client's house, they found themselves strolling through an idyllic neighborhood with quaint storefronts and charming houses. As they walked, they noticed a little tea house nestled between two buildings, and the aroma of freshly brewed tea and savory food wafted out onto the street, tantalizing their senses. Intrigued by the cozy atmosphere and mouth-watering scents, the team decided to take a lunch break and recharge before continuing on their journey. Yugito, with a curious expression on her face, directed her question towards Darui-sensei, "Why would the land of tea hire us?" she asked. She paused for a moment before continuing, "I mean, I'm sure hiring Konoha Shinobi would actually be cheaper, isn't it?" Her mind was racing with thoughts, trying to make sense of the situation. She wondered what could be the reason behind the Land of T's decision to hire them instead of the shinobi from their own land. Well, I'm actually not sure. Hiring Konoha team would be much cheaper. Darui answered, already thinking of asking Gyogo once they met. As the four Kumo shinobi entered the restaurant, the aroma of steaming hot dishes filled their senses. With a quick glance around the room, they spotted a vacant table and made their way toward it. As they sat down and settled in, their hungry stomachs growled in agreement. Without wasting any time, they beckoned the waiter over and placed their orders. Naruto, with a sweet tooth, opted for the delectable sweetness of the sweet bean soup, while Yugito, the lover of savory flavors, requested the juicy and scrumptious dumplings. Omoi, on the other hand, chose to indulge in the simplicity of just jelly. Darui had just placed an order for the shop's specialty tea. But, unknown to the four, a young guy sitting across from them, who was gritting his teeth and gazing daggers at them the instant he noticed their headbands. Ninja from the hidden lightning village, the young guy said, his voice tinged with hate. As he stood up, the young guy walked gently up to the table of the four Kumo shinobis to speak his bit. With a smug tone, the young guy added, having sweet bean soup while it's so pleasant outdoors. The ninja profession really is carefree today. What are you trying to say? Naruto queried the stranger, his eyes narrowing. Things must be pretty tranquil in Kumo, judging by the thick-looking folks like you all, the young man replied, his grin widening even further. All right, friend, I'm going to ask you to go right now, Naruto stated calmly. He was no longer bothered by petty remarks from dumb individuals. Who the heck do you think you are? Asked Yugito. When the young guy observed Yugito, hey, I didn't realize there was such a sweetie here, I take back my prior statement. As Yugito gazed upon him with a blank expression, she couldn't help but feel unimpressed and almost insulted by his attempts to charm her. Despite his efforts to win her over, his approach was far from effective, leaving her with the impression that he was, in fact, quite the Idate Morino, the now identified Idate adds seductively as he continues to flirt with the gorgeous blonde female. What's your name, young lady? Morino. Isn't that? Darui wondered since the surname was one he recognized. Yugito ni, she answered with an eye roll. Yugito huh? That's a lovely name, Idate adds with a smile. Well, since destiny has brought us together, isn't it time we spoke about our future? Not even a grandma would be d by your words, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. She had hoped that her words would be enough to convince him to walk away, but as she watched him, she could see that they had only served to further stoke his determination. Despite her best efforts, he remained steadfast in his pursuit of her, refusing to be deterred by her cutting words. As Idate prepared to lean in closer, his eyes locked onto Yugito's, admiring their deep, captivating shade of blue. However, in an instant, Yugito had grown tired of Idate's advances, and with a swift, forceful motion, she delivered a powerful kick to his stomach. The impact was so intense that Idate immediately lost his balance, falling to his knees while gasping for air. The pain radiating from his stomach was excruciating, causing him to double over and clutch his abdomen tightly. With a smirk on his face, Naruto confidently interjected, "If I were you, I'd advise against pursuing my girlfriend any further, my friend. She has a bit of a distaste for gentlemen with outlandish hairstyles." Yugito stood beside Naruto, gleefully nodding in agreement as Idate's eyes widened in shock. As Idate glared at the two looming over him, he could feel the searing pain radiating from his stomach where he had just taken a brutal kick. His muscles tensed as he struggled to stand up, fighting against the dizziness that threatened to overcome him. Waves of nausea rolled over him, threatening to spill the contents of his stomach onto the ground, but somehow he managed to hold himself together, gritting his teeth through the agony as he tried to steady his breathing. Nice kick. Don't worry, I'm only joking, but the rest of it isn't a joke. If there's one thing I can't abide by, it's a ninja. If you keep roaming about the land of tea, there will be problems, Idate remarked with venom in his voice. Darui's eyes narrowed as he fixed his gaze on the young boy standing before him. His voice was calm, almost measured, as he posed the question, "Are you threatening us, boy?" "Like I said, a simple caution," Idate smugly said. "Well, We don't take simple warnings from skinny heads, Naruto stated calmly. So, if I were you, I'd scram. Before I enforce my first warning on you. For the insult, Idate stared fiercely at Naruto. He wondered who this young blonde kid thought he was. Yugito murmured softly to her blonde partner, "Calm down, Naruto-kun. She's correct. Just ignore the obnoxious punk." "We don't have time," Omoi replied, his voice bored. Idate eventually walked away to the side of the shop. As Naruto sat on his chair, sipping his aromatic tea, the gentle jingle of the bell hanging above the tea shop's entrance caught his attention. His ears perked up in curiosity as he listened to the sound of footsteps approaching. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and in walked a group of Konoha shinobi, clad in their distinctive uniforms. "Darui-sensei, we have a problem," Omoi informed the sensei with a hushed tone, who had immediately noticed them. He didn't recognize any of them besides the Jonin from Konoha. The Jonin was a tall man with brown eyes, olive skin, short black spiky hair, and a beard. His clothing consisted of the standard Konoha ninja uniform with the sleeves rolled up halfway, a flak jacket, regular shinobi sandals, and a forehead protector. He also wore a sash that had the kanji for fire marked on it around his waist, a pair of black bangles, and bandages wrapped around the arms of his sleeves. "That's Asuma Sarutobi. I wonder what is bringing him here," Darui informed them. Despite the Konoha Jonin being there, Darui's voice was calm and collected. Naruto furrowed a brow, as did Yugito and Omoi. The name was quite famous even in Kumo. The child of the cage of any village was always famous, but Asuma Sarutobi was an elite Jonin, so that only added to his popularity. "Somehow, I doubt they are here only to drink tea," Omoi spoke, knowing a Konoha team arrived at Land Tea the same day as them. That couldn't be a coincidence. Perhaps they were spies sent to gather information, or maybe they were here to sabotage their mission. "Well, should we ignore them, engage, or talk?" Yugito asked, her voice a little on edge. She was analyzing the Konoha team with her cat-like eyes. They didn't seem much. The Jonin was clearly the biggest obstacle, the Genins. Well, one was fat, the other was a blonde platinum-haired girl who didn't seem to have much muscle in her, if any muscle, and the third had a pineapple head. Yugito soon concluded none of them seemed a big deal except the Jonin. Naruto, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes. Out of the entire Konoha team, the one with pineapple hair was the one who was sneakily glancing at them. His glances were fast and sharp, one could easily miss them, but Naruto could detect them. He knew the Konoha team knew of them being there. Soon Ide tried the same with the Konoha team. Whatever he said resulted in Asuma telling the boy to back off. Darui wondered if they should leave and continue with their mission. As the tension in the room mounted, the Jonin of the Konoha team nonchalantly rose to his feet, his strong and confident stature commanding everyone's attention. With a cigarette dangling between his middle and index finger, he took a leisurely drag before slowly moving away from his seat, his eyes intently focused on the Kumo team. As Darui rose from his chair, he exuded a subtle yet unmistakable amount of ki, which rippled through the air like a gust of wind, silently warning the Konoha shinobi not to make any sudden moves. Asuma, standing nearby, seemed unfazed by Darui's display of power. Still, his genins, who were standing a few feet away, couldn't help but feel intimidated as they watched the waves of ki wash over them, causing their faces to lose their color and their knees to shake uncontrollably. Asuma's gaze was fixed on Darui, who seemed agitated and ready to pick a fight. With a gentle yet firm tone, Asuma spoke up, "I would appreciate it if you tone it down a notch." He didn't want any trouble, not today, not ever. As a seasoned warrior, he knew the consequences of unnecessary conflicts and how they could escalate quickly, leaving behind nothing but chaos and destruction. However, there was a subtle hint of warning in his voice, a warning that Darui picked up on. Asuma's words were not to be taken lightly. Darui nodded in agreement, and with a deep breath, he stopped his ki. Asuma smiled, relieved that his message had been received. "I'm not here to fight," he said, hoping that his words would be the end of it. With a deep breath, Asuma lit a cigarette, the smoke curling lazily around his face as he exhaled. The atmosphere around the group had been tense, with the Kumo team eyeing them warily, but as he took another drag, Asuma felt the tension dissipate like smoke in the wind. His eyes fared over the group, taking in their expressions and body language, until they landed on the blonde male. Something about him caught Asuma's attention, something that he couldn't quite put his finger on. Maybe it was the way the man held himself, with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, or maybe it was the way his eyes sparkled in the dim light. Whatever it was, Asuma found himself drawn to the blonde male, his gaze lingering on him for just a moment longer than necessary. Asuma's mind raced back to the time when he was much younger and had first laid eyes on the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Though he hadn't personally known the legendary Hokage, his reputation had preceded him, and Asuma had always been in awe of the man's incredible abilities and unmatched strength. And now, as he looked upon the young boy standing in front of him, he couldn't help but notice the striking similarities between the child and the fourth Hokage. The boy's spiky blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and the way he carried himself all bore an uncanny resemblance to the Hokage. Asuma couldn't help but wonder if this was a mere coincidence or if there was something more to this boy's story that was yet to be revealed. My name is Asuma Sarutobi. I take you were hired by Joriko for an escort mission. Sarutobi inquired, wanting to break the thin ice between them. Nah, we were hired by Gyogo. The Raikage-sama received the mission yesterday. We were quite surprised but figured it would be a good opportunity, and I take it you were hired by Joriko for a similar mission. Darui wasn't asking, he knew something was off, and the irritation was easy to hear from his voice. Yes, our Hokage received the same scroll a week ago. How about we go there and earn an explanation? My team won't try anything, Asuma proposed, giving his team a look as he did. Darui raised an eyebrow before nodding nonchalantly. Sure. Name is Darui. He introduced himself before shaking each other's hands, a sign of a temporary alliance. Good to meet you. My three genins are Shoji Akamichi, Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka. They all introduced themselves while waving at the genins of the Kumo team. Darui turned to his team, motioning for them to introduce themselves. Omoi, Yugito ni, Naruto Yatsuki. As Shikamaru heard the last name, his sharp mind went into overdrive as he tried to place the familiar ring of the last name. His eyebrows rose inquisitively as he racked his brain, replaying past encounters. He could feel the gears turning in his head as he sifted through memories and associations, searching for that elusive link. It was like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Frustrating and intriguing at the same time. Just when he thought he had it, the name slipped away like sand through his fingers, leaving him grasping at a memory that refused to take shape. Alright, Shikamaru, you're the one in charge now. Make sure to watch over your friends. Asuma told his best genin, who sighed wearily. Am I their babysitter, now? This is troublesome, Shikamaru said with a weary sigh. Naruto found his way of talking funny. Naruto, he commanded in a resolute voice, protect your team until I return. I want no problems, do you understand? Naruto nodded in agreement without hesitation as both of their genins left. As Asuma took his leave, Ino shifted her focus entirely toward Yugito, studying her curves and physique with a great deal of curiosity. She couldn't help but wonder how Yugito had been blessed with such an incredible body, and as she continued to gaze admiringly, a pang of jealousy began to settle in her heart. Her envy was palpable, and Yugito could sense it, causing her to feel increasingly irritated and frustrated with Ino's constant scrutiny. So, what is it like to be a Kumo shinobi? Shikamaru inquired, his eyes gleaming with curiosity as he leaned forward in his chair. The question had been gnawing at him for some time now, and he figured he might as well start a conversation with his fellow ninja comrades as they all sat at a round table, waiting for their respective genins to return. The room was filled with the sounds of clinking plates and idle chatter. It's fine, we don't have a forest like Konoha, but we do have the Twin Mountains. It's a spectacular view from up there. Naruto answered as he ordered tea for his whole team. Twin Mountains. I heard they're the highest peak in the whole known world, 12 kilometers tall if I remember correctly. Shikamaru said with a little smile as he tried to imagine what it would look like to climb such tall mountains. Yes, Kumo even has a yearly festival, a race to see who can climb to the top without using chakra. You're given food and other important things, and you need to climb all by yourself, Naruto explained. Shikamaru was left astonished by Naruto's explanation and let out a low whistle, realizing the immense difficulty of climbing such a mountain without the aid of chakra. It was indeed too troublesome to even think about attempting such a feat, but the idea of such a race intrigued him nonetheless. Choji went a little pale. He was tempted to ask how much food they were given before the race but soon decided it didn't matter since he wasn't from Kumo. Konoha has its own tradition, but we have a race once a year, where people make the faces of the Hokage entirely with clay. It's troublesome. Shikamaru said the atmosphere was getting more relaxing and friendlier as they all drank jasmine dragon tea. Kumo and Konoha teams started talking more, mostly Shikamaru and Naruto. The blonde found it easy to speak with the pineapple head. Excuse me. Ino suddenly interrupted before pointing at Yugito. But what did you eat to gain that size? Ino asked bluntly, pointing at Yugito's S. Shikamaru couldn't believe what he had just heard from Ino, and his reaction was immediate. He brought his hand to his face with a loud smack that reverberated around the entire tea shop, making everyone turn their heads to see what was going on. Choji, on the other hand, seemed unfazed by the commotion as he continued munching on his chips, not caring about the scene unfolding before him. Yugito, who was sitting next to Ino, was less than impressed by the question and gave her a deadpan look that conveyed her disappointment in such a query. Why do you even care? Being strong, it's more important. What good size is going to do when you're dead? Yugito spoke with a hint of irritation. Ino felt a shudder of fear in her body, unsure if it was because of Yugito's comment about her dying or her strange cat-like eyes. Calm down, Yugito-chan, Naruto said softly, his gentle hand resting on her shoulder as he tried his best to soothe her anger. Yugito, fuming with rage a moment ago, could feel the tension melting away from her body with every touch of Naruto's hand. His touch was like a cool breeze on a hot summer day, calming her down and easing her troubled mind. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of Naruto's presence beside her. Shikamaru was about to ask Naruto more about Kumo when the waitress arrived at their table with a smile on her face, holding not one, not two, but 3 bills. As she walks away from the table, the waitress replies, "I'll collect them when you're done." Wait, why 3 bills? Choji asked. Yours and your young buddy who just departed, who stated you guys would pay for him. The waitress said. That son of a bitch. Yugito shouted. Naruto, can you locate him? Omoi begged his closest blonde buddy. Naruto stepped out of his chair and knelt on the ground, saying, "On it." Shikamaru paid close attention to what Naruto was doing. Sensors from Kumo were quite rare to find. I know where he is, but he's traveling fast. We need to get moving immediately if we want to catch up. From what I can see, he's fairly far away. Naruto said solemnly. That no good jerk. He thinks he can make a fool out of us. Yugito exclaims, her eyes bright with rage. Let's go catch him so I drown him in the sea. Not until I burn him and rip him up into shreds. Naruto exclaims, returning the wicked grin with her own. We can crush him, but first, we must find him, Shikamaru said, stopping their sadistic phase. They also exchanged a little, evil chuckle, which made Omoi's palms sweat as he worried about his blonde colleague's violent inclinations. Omoi sighed tiredly. I knew this was going to be a lengthy assignment. The 6 genins then hurried out of the tea house. Area of forest. That person has tremendous speed. He must have spent years training his legs to be able to cover this distance in such a short amount of time, Naruto observed. Omoi inquired, who the heck is he anyway? Probably a racer. I read somewhere that children here are trained to run for miles since they are 5 years old. Shikamaru said his bit. It doesn't matter, Yugito said, we're definitely going to catch up to him. Idate was speeding through the forest like there was no tomorrow. Stupid ninja. I'll be miles away from those losers before they can even get started, Idate stated smugly. However, as he continued to run at maximum speed, he stumbled on a root and was sent plummeting from a cliff, unaware that his pocket knife had dropped from his grasp. Before hitting the ground, he was able to halt his fall by colliding against a tree limb. All the speed in the world won't help if I don't keep an eye on where I'm going, Idate scolded himself. Idate then leaps off the limb and lands on his feet on the ground. He didn't understand, however, that he was surrounded by 5 enraged genins and 1 bored genin. I agree, but that will not be important. Once I break both your legs, Yugito said, releasing part of her murderous fury. Idate glanced up and saw the furious blonde girl on his left, Omoi on his right, and Naruto in front of him, standing on a tree limb. Idate was totally encircled. He knew he could still outrun them and was about to run away when his body stopped moving. I'm afraid you can't move a finger. My shadow possession jutsu has captured you. The only thing you can do now is pray. Shikamaru said with a wicked smirk. Idate's heart raced in terror as he watched as his shadow was indeed connected to Shikamaru's shadow. Good job, Shikamaru. It seems you have a sharp head. Naruto complimented, his attention still solely focused on Idate. You have a lot of audacity to piss these two off, but it was because of you that I had to run, so now you piss me off, Omoi grumbled. Did you honestly think you could get away with it? We're ninjas, whether you like it or not, and we were trained to catch punks like you, so I hope you're ready for what's coming next, Yugito said, cracking her knuckles and indicating that she was about to beat the living hell out of the dasher in front of him. Idate clenched his teeth, knowing there was only one thing he could do now to rescue himself. Idate shouted, I'm sorry. As he tried to kneel, but the shadow jutsu didn't exactly allow him much movement. Huh, the genins were totally caught off guard, startled by the unexpected show of timidity. They then leapt off their limbs and landed near Idate. Shikamaru stopped using his shadow jutsu since it seemed Idate was with no backbone. I had my wallet stolen and was at a loss, and then you guys stepped up, and I didn't know what else to do, Idate said, almost pleading for mercy. Are you kidding? All your money? Ino inquired, her voice tinged with sorrow. Why didn't you just say OWW? Naruto yelped in agony as something landed on his head, but he caught it before it went to the ground. It was a pocket knife, to be precise. What is this? Naruto wondered, staring at the knife in awe. When Idate lifted his head off the ground, he discovered it was his prized pocket knife. And it's being held by someone other than him. Don't touch it. Give it to me. Idate's timidity morphed into a rage as he hurriedly attempted to reclaim Naruto's pocket knife. Naruto, on the other hand, had quicker reflexes than the idiot runner and was able to evade all of his frantic clutches, which finally evolved into violent blows. Hey, quit it. I'm warning you, Naruto exclaimed angrily, in between dodges and blocks, in response to Idate's unexpected hostility. All of this for a useless pocket knife. Naruto is growing more enraged with the older boy in front of him. Who is he to be enraged by him? That is mine. Give it back, or. Idate couldn't complete his statement before being knocked out cold by a swift haymaker punch from the Yotsuki. Naruto-kun, said Yugito, stunned by the unexpected knockout strike. What? The jerk went insane and attacked me because I was carrying his pocket knife. Nice workmanship, however, Naruto observed as he examined the custom-made weapon. Maybe that's why Idate was so desperate to have it back. Alright, we accomplished what we came for, right? We hunted him down, and you struck him in the face. Can we go now? Omoi said, his voice bored. Yeah, Darui-sensei isn't far away, and he's on his way to the Wagarashi family's property right now, so let's catch up with him, Naruto remarked. Yugito said, what are you planning to do with the pocket knife? I'm not a thief, even if I really enjoy the handle's design. But I'm going to leave him a letter. Something to remind him what will happen if he crosses us again, Naruto stated with a wicked grin that gave both Yugito and Omoi shivers. Shikamaru had to admit this mission wasn't what he had expected, but Naruto's face was quite familiar. He raised an eyebrow, a smile spreading on his face. Perhaps this mission wouldn't be as troublesome as he had thought. Why does this Naruto look identical to our fourth Hokage? Idate had a black eye and a severe headache when he awoke. The last thing he recalled was the blonde ninja guy punching him in the face because he was clutching his. Where has my knife gone? Idate saw his pocket knife close by. Its blade protrudes from the ground downward. Idate promptly got up and rushed to get it, but then he saw the carved written message next to the knife on the ground. Hello, Idate. Please accept my apologies for accidentally touching your valuable knife. I had no idea you were so strange about it. Maybe you have it to keep yourself company. Fortunately for you, I'm not a thief. But you mocked the shinobi title and cheated your way out of your bill. Putting that aside, Since you like issuing simple warnings, I'll offer you mine. If I ever see you again, I'm going to chop your balls off with that lovely little knife of yours. Your nightmare. Idate laughed off the warning as if it were a joke, but he couldn't help but feel a shiver up his spine. He was knocked down cold by a single blow from the alleged Naruto. Imagine if he meant it when he said he was going to harm him. That concept alone was enough to make him feel frightened. Gyogo's residence in the Wagarashi family compound. As Team 10 regrouped with their Jonin sensei, they found themselves standing in front of Gyogo, the well-respected head of the Wagarashi family, and their esteemed customer. The group was greeted warmly by Gyogo, whose sincere appreciation for their presence was evident in his grateful reply, "Welcome and thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope your journey here went well." "Not at all, Gyogo-san. We understand how important this race is to your nation. My name is Darui, Elite Jonin, and this is my Genin team, Naruto Uzumaki, Yugito ni, and Omoi," Darui explains as he introduces his team. "At your service," Naruto greeted. With a grin, Yugito responded, "Nice to meet you, Gyogo-san." With a leisurely wave, Omoi remarked, "What's up? It's good to meet all of you, and it's an honor to have you here. I'm grateful for your assistance," Gyogo stated, smiling. "Now that we've said our hellos, let's get down to business," Darui said. "Lord Raikage ordered us to acquire the specifics of our mission straight from you. I'm sure Lord Raikage has already told everything to you about the dedication ceremony at the Great Todoroki Shrine that takes place every 4 years, Gyogo said, assuring them of their understanding of the issue. "Yes," Naruto said, "but if you could perhaps explain more, we would be grateful." "All right, please have a seat," Gyogo stated, motioning the 4 shinobis to take a seat so they could hear the explanation. It all started a long time ago. Legend has it that in order to subdue a terrible storm, the people dedicated the Ryuko's jewels to the great Todoroki shrine in desperation. And it worked. The storms went away, and it became a customary event that happens every 4 years. At first, it was just to dedicate the jewels. But several decades ago, it became a festival and a race. The winner of the race. However, in recent years, what was once a friendly race has taken on a troubling aspect. For generations, the port town of Dagarashi has been divided into 2 families, the Wasabi and the Wagarashi. 2 rivaling gambling organizations. Both families wanted control over the town, which naturally led to disputes. These disputes became increasingly violent, at times resulting in all-out battles. The rest of the town's people were caught in the crossfire. Many were killed. Finally, in an attempt to break the cycle of violence, our district head called on both sides to get together and reach an agreement. From now on, control of the town will be chosen by competition rather than street brawls, Gyogo revealed. "What kind of competition is it?" Yugito inquired. "The race is held every 4 years at the Great Todoroki Shrine dedication ceremony. Due to how dangerous this race is, I need you to make sure my runner is not harmed in any way," Joriko said, his voice sad. "I implore you all," Joriko said as he bowed down to the 4 shinobi before him. "Please contribute your strength to our family. The people are thriving under our rule. Everyone is happy and prosperous. Our land needs House Wagarashi to lead for another 4 years, Joriko urged, his voice with desperation in his tone. Naruto could tell the man was lying through his teeth, but he had hired them, so he kept his mouth shut. Omoi said, "So, who do you want us to accompany anyway?" Gyogo smiled and clapped his hands. "Excellent, so you'll accept the job then." The Wagarashi family's selected runner emerged from the sliding door beside them. "Yes, boss, you called for me," said the runner. "Yes, dear Acne. These are shinobi from Kumo. They will make sure nothing bad happens to you during the race." Gyogo spoke, pointing at the Kumo team. Darui couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Something here was definitely off. "Oh, good. But before we start, I want you to know I'm the runner and the boss. Don't get in my way during the race," Acne warned the Kumo team. Yugito's blood boiled with anger as she clenched her fists tightly, resisting the urge to pummel Acne's face into the ground. Naruto, on the other hand, simply smirked to himself, wondering if he could outsmart the overly confident runner and put him in his place. "Watch your tone, brat," Naruto spoke in a deep, menacing voice, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous intensity that sent shivers down the runner's spine. The young athlete was taken aback by the sudden change in the atmosphere and knew that he had angered Naruto, who was not one to be trifled with. However, Naruto's threat was not just an idle one, as he continued in a low growl, "I don't think you need your tongue to win the race." The runner gritted his teeth. "You are supposed to protect me," Acne declared with an air of superiority. "From now on, you do whatever I tell you to do." Naruto's patience was wearing thin as he resisted the urge to cut the brat's head off. Suddenly, Darui cleared his throat while putting a hand on Naruto's shoulder and tightening his grip slightly, causing him to wince. "Please forgive my genin. He's new to this." Darui apologized respectfully. Acne grinned triumphantly while Yugito and Omoi glared at the runner. "Good. At least one of you knows his place." Acne spoke with a sinister smile before looking at Yugito with clear lust in his eyes. Degarashi. Naruto and Acne are presently strolling along Degarashi Street. To clear the air between the two, Darui believed it would be a good idea. He just hopes that Naruto does not murder the person he is supposed to protect. "Boss Joriko is a very important guy around here," Acne grumbled. "I really hope he knows what he is doing hiring worthless shinobi like you. I'm still a shinobi on duty, and whether I like it or not, I still have to escort your crappy," Naruto remarked, his voice tinged with hate. Acne screamed at the younger blonde lad beside him, "Believe me. If I wanted an escort, it would not be some snot-nosed runt like you. For the sake of my assignment, I'm going to pretend you didn't just call me that." "I'm still your bodyguard, Acne," Naruto responded angrily. Acne merely sneered, "HMPH. Elsewhere, Omoi and Yugito and Omoi made a decision to explore the vibrant town. As they sauntered through the bustling streets, their eyes darted from one fascinating sight to the next. However, their curiosity was piqued when they stumbled upon a quaint trinket store, beckoning to them with its colorful display of knick-knacks and souvenirs. Without hesitation, they stepped inside. As they perused through the store, their eyes widening in wonder and awe, they couldn't help but notice that the prices of most items were unexpectedly exorbitant compared to their actual value. Nevertheless, they continued to browse, admiring the intricate designs and unique craftsmanship of the various trinkets on display. "These rates are absurd, even if it's a tourist resort," Yugito told Omoi. "Perhaps it's a high market," Omoi said sloppily. However, the shopkeeper overheard their not so quiet talk. "I'm sorry about that. Even I know it's pretty pricey," the shopkeeper acknowledged to her products, dramatic overpricing. "Oh no, I didn't mean." Yugito apologized, hoping she hadn't offended the shopkeeper, but she didn't seem to mind. "Oh, don't worry, sweetheart, we don't want to sell at these rates too, but once the Wagarashi family took control of this town." The woman shopkeeper couldn't complete her statement because they all heard a huge crash and the sound of shattered glass just outside the store. They went to investigate and saw three goons in the middle of the street harassing one of the town's merchants. As he kneeled on the floor before the three goons, the elderly merchant implored, Please pardon me. How dare you? When we want something, we take it. Got it? You wouldn't even be in business if it weren't for the Wagarashi," said one of the goons, who was later shown to be a Wagarashi family member. I know, only it's that, to take it without paying for it is," the elderly merchant reasoned, but he was ignored. "You don't understand it, do you? Boys, go steal his things while I give him a lesson," the alleged leader said, ordering his two goons to plunder the shopkeeper. The elderly merchant, with his wrinkled face and trembling hands, pleaded with the group of bandits who were attempting to rob him of his hard-earned goods. "No, please stop," he exclaimed, his voice quivering with fear and desperation. He attempted to resist their advances, but the leader of the group seized his shirt collar and pulled him closer. The old man's heart raced with terror as he braced himself, for the leader sneered at the old merchant, his eyes glinting with malice. "Perhaps this will help you comprehend," he exclaimed, raising his hand and attempting to strike the defenseless man in the face. The old merchant closed his eyes and braced for impact, only to be halted by Yugito, who came out of nowhere and grabbed the leader's impending fist, firmly holding it. As soon as the leader spotted the platinum blonde female, He said, "What the hell? Who are you? Why don't you and your buddies go for a hike?" Yugito suggested, her tone solemn. My, what have we got here? She's quite a gorgeous little thing, isn't she?" One of the other two goons returned after hearing his commander shouting. He, like the other, had a wicked smile and a ravenous expression in his eyes. "Yeah, why don't you come with us, blonde, and we'll show you a wonderful time," the other thug remarked. His tongue fed across his lips in a way that made Yugito's skin crawl. "Well, if you want me, come get me. After all, you can take anything you want, right?" Yugito challenged, disgusted. "Please get her out of there. These individuals are from the Wagarashi family, and they are dangerous, particularly to a little girl like her," implored the lady shopkeeper to Omoi. "Don't worry, she'll be all right, it's them who should be concerned," Omoi replied, a confident grin on his face. "You asked for it. Get her, boys," shouted the commander to his two companions. The woman shopkeeper instantly hid her face behind her hands. She couldn't stand seeing the three Wagarashi goons attack the adorable blonde girl. The only noises she heard were excruciating writhing and bones snapping. When she opened her eyes, she, like the rest of the audience, was taken aback by the spectacle in front of them. "Why you won't get away with this? We'll get you next time, lady. Don't mess with us, or you'll get what you deserve," shouted one of the three bruised and battered Wagarashi thugs as he and the other thug were preparing to depart with their unconscious boss. Because she didn't enjoy the sound of threats, Yugito clenched her fists loudly enough for the thugs to hear, forcing them to shriek in terror and flee as quickly as they could. "Thank you, whatever you are, young lady," the elderly merchant remarked as he humbly bent his head to the platinum blonde girl. "Look at those guys run. Now, if the Wasabi family can win the race, we'll be done with them for good," the woman shopkeeper said gleefully as she assisted the elderly merchant. "Are you all well, Yugito?" Omoi said, concerned about his buddy. "Don't worry, Omoi," Yugito remarked confidently. "Those creeps aren't even worth breaking a sweat." The guest room at Gyogo's residence. Naruto, Yugito, and Omoi are currently in Darui's guest room, confronting him. He seemed to have something essential to say to them. "All right, gentlemen, here's a brief mission update. I won't be accompanying you on the escort tomorrow," Darui said. Yugito inquired, "What? Why?" "Apparently, the daimyo of the land of Tea has ordered me to examine the Wagarashi family and the minister of Port Dagarashi since the daimyo feels the minister has been questionably prejudiced with the Wagarashi and suspects foul play," Darui explained his new job to them. Omoi said, "So you believe this minister is assisting the Wagarashi?" "Perhaps. That is what I aim to find out. But aren't we hired by them? What should we do?" Yugito questioned. She didn't like that she was hired by them, but they were shinobi, and they would need to complete their job without asking questions. "That's not important. Right now, you go on with the mission like usual. I will let you know if anything changes. From what I understood, the Konoha team is hired by the other family, so it is possible you might encounter them during the race. If you fight with them, do what is necessary to survive." Darui explained strictly. His team nodded in understanding. The thought of fighting the Konoha team didn't really sit well with Naruto. "So we'll accompany Acne by ourselves," Naruto said. "Are you sure we're ready, sensei?" "Yes, I have complete faith in you three and your abilities, and I am confident you will succeed. Naruto, I am appointing you as acting captain of Team 10 until my mission is completed. And a word of advice. While completing a mission is important, never jeopardize the safety of your comrades," Darui advised his sunny blonde student. "Yes, sensei," Naruto answered confidently, "I will defend them all with my life. And I'll guard yours with mine," Yugito responded, pledging to protect her, blonde, at all costs. "It's too inconvenient to die last, so I'll make sure you people are safe as well," Omoi replied calmly, but he meant every word. "Ha ha ha, you guys never fail to surprise me. Good luck tomorrow, and beware of the enemy shinobi. Those from Clan Nara are infamous for their shadow-possessing jutsu," Darui warned his squad. "We'll be cautious, sensei," Naruto promised with a cheerful grin. "Kiri, you asked for me, Mei-sama," a man asked respectfully as he entered the tent. He was around his 30s, and he had an eye patch on his right eye. As Mei stood with her back turned, her auburn hair cascading down her middle back in waves, and her luscious red lips pursed in determination. She radiated an air of confidence and poise that belied her position as the leader of the revolution. Clad in a stunning blue dress that perfectly hugged her curves, she exuded both strength and femininity, a combination that made her all the more captivating to those who followed her cause. And yet, despite the weight of her responsibility and the gravity of the mission before her, she remained focused and unrelenting in her pursuit of justice, determined to overthrow the tyrannical reign of Yugura and restore freedom to her people. Mei is a tall and slender woman with a complexion as fair as a pearl, is a sight to behold with her striking green eyes that seem to gleam like emeralds in the sun. Her ankle-length hair, a rich auburn hue, is styled into a herringbone pattern at the back, giving her a sophisticated and regal air. The top of her head is adorned with a top knot tied with a dark blue band, adding a pop of color to her otherwise earthy palette. Her hair is parted into 4 bangs at the front, framing her face in a way that accentuates her sharp features. 2 of these bangs are short, with one artfully draped over her right eye, giving her an air of mystery. The other 2 are long, crossing each other on her bust, just below her chin, lending her an air of elegance and poise. She wears a long-sleeved, dark blue dress that falls just below the knees. It seems to be closed at the front with a zipper and is kept open on the front right side from the waist down. The dress only covers the upper part of her arms and the underside of her S. Underneath, she wears mesh armor that covers slightly more of her upper body than her dress. She also wears a skirt in the same color as her dress and, underneath those, mesh leggings reaching down over her knees. Around her waist, she wears a belt with a pouch attached to the back on the left, along with high-heeled sandals, shin guards reaching up over her knees, dark blue nail polish on her fingers and toes, and is usually shown with purple lipstick. Yes, I need you to go to Kumo, Mei stated with a sense of urgency, her eyes still glued to the paper in her hands. I need you to talk with the Raikage and deliver this message on behalf of me. Ao's curiosity was piqued, and he respectfully bowed his head as he inquired, why do we need to meet with the Raikage? Is there something urgent that requires our attention? Mei turned to look at him. A smirk reached her face. She knew only one who would write this letter. We need help to defeat Yugura, and right now, Kumo is the only village with a perfect Jinchuriki that can fight one-on-one against Yugura. Mei spoke, Ao's visible eye widened slightly. As they debated their next move, a figure watched from the shadows, silently observing their every move. It was clear that they were not alone in their quest to defeat Yugura. Someone else was watching their every move, waiting for the right opportunity to strike. Interesting, the figure thought to themselves, quickly sinking into the ground before anyone noticed him. The sun had set, and the evening breeze brought a sense of anticipation as the town geared up for the grand race, a running competition that had been the highlight of the year for as long as anyone could remember. The entire community was abuzz with excitement, and the atmosphere was electric. The sound of laughter and chatter filled the air as people gathered around the starting line, eagerly awaiting the beginning of the event. As the runners took their positions, the sky was illuminated with a dazzling display of colors as fireworks were shot up into the sky, casting a magical glow on the faces of the spectators. The noise of the explosions and the cheers of the crowd merged into a symphony of sound that echoed across the town. The rivalry between the two families, the Wasabis and the Wagasagi, was at an all-time high, and the spectators were divided in their support. However, it was the Wasabi family that seemed to have the upper hand, with their runner, Idate, being the favorite to win. Ino gasped in amazement as she scanned the massive crowd that had gathered for the running race. Wow, I didn't realize this running race was going to be this big. The whole town is here, so what kind of race is this anyway? She exclaimed, turning to her current team captain, Shikamaru. Her captain responded with a sly grin on his face. You know, the kind that starts and finishes, he quipped, adding a touch of innocent sarcasm to his response. Ino couldn't help but roll her eyes at her friend's quip but secretly appreciated his humor, knowing it helped calm her nerves before the big race. Ino, with a playful grin on her face, admonished Shikamaru for his laziness. Cheeky, aren't you, lazy? She quipped, poking him in the side. Shikamaru, not one to be bothered by such small jabs, simply yawned loudly, causing Ino to pout in frustration. Despite her best efforts to motivate him, Shikamaru remained unfazed. Shikamaru let out a chuckle before relaying the vital information to his comrades. Ha ha ha. Well, according to Joriko-san's intel, the starting point of this grueling race is none other than the bustling harbor of Dagarashi, teeming with eager participants ready to put their skills to the test. From this very spot, the runners will embark on an arduous journey towards the mysterious Midoroki Shrine, an ancient structure steeped in legend and lore, located on the enigmatic Nagi Island, which serves as the midpoint of this thrilling competition. With AF of his wrist, Shikamaru brandished a detailed map, highlighting the precise routes and headings that they must follow in order to emerge victorious. Choji's eyes scanned the vast expanse of the ocean, realizing that their only means of transportation to the island was a small ship. I guess we'll be sailing then, he said with a hint of hesitancy in his voice, his gaze still fixed on the daunting horizon. Don't worry, Choji, Shikamaru reassured his teammate with a confident grin. His face lit up as he explained the rules and regulations of the upcoming race ahead of them. It seems the race's first leg is to use a boat from here, he continued, his voice laced with excitement. Once we reach Nagi Island, the runner had to take one of two, Ryuko's jewels from the Midoroki Shrine and run all the way to dedicate their jewel at the Great Todoroki Shrine. It's a race against time, and whoever makes it there first wins. Shikamaru's eyes gleamed with fierce determination as he spoke. That's as far as the basic rules go, but other than that, anything goes. Shortcuts, obstructions, and secret maneuvers are all allowed. Choji's voice quivered slightly as he spoke, so hiring a ninja is not a violation of the rules either. His mind raced as he recalled the formidable Kumo team, knowing that his own team would inevitably have to face them in the race. Ino's eyes darted around the bustling crowd, scanning each face for any sign of the elusive ninjas of the Wagarashi family. She couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency and curiosity as she asked, but where are the ninjas of the Wagarashi family? Her mind raced with thoughts of their renowned stealth and skill, wondering if they were hidden in plain sight or lurking in the shadows. Shikamaru surveyed the bustling crowd with narrowed eyes and an intense focus. His sharp gaze lingered on the group of individuals who seemed to be keeping a low profile, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. It seems they are keeping a low profile, he murmured to his fellow ninja, the Kumo team, who had arrived to support the other family. Despite the reassurance that they were there only to protect the runner of the other team, Shikamaru couldn't shake the feeling that there was something sinister lurking beneath the surface. They're all very dangerous, he continued, his voice low and serious. Especially the Naruto guy. If he shows up, be careful. His words hung in the air like a warning, underscoring the gravity of the situation. As Idate called out to his young bodyguards, his voice was firm and determined. I don't care what you guys do, he said, just don't get in my way. I have a race to win. His eyes were fixed on the gate in front of him, his mind already racing ahead to the glory that awaited him. Don't worry, Idate, Ino said, her voice calm and steady. You just focus on running. We'll be right behind you. He turned towards Idate, who was standing with arms folded and said, besides, it's our job to ensure no one gets in your way. But if we encounter any opposition, you will do what we say. Understood. The last word was emphasized to make sure that Idate knew the gravity of the situation. However, Idate was not impressed and merely scoffed, letting out a derisive sound that demonstrated his lack of concern for the order. Shikamaru sighed inwardly, knowing it wouldn't be an easy mission with Idate's attitude. As the sun began to rise over the town, the anticipation in the air was palpable. The smell of freshly baked goods mixed with the sound of excited chatter as the locals gathered at the starting line for the annual race. Suddenly, the sound of a booming voice echoed through the loudspeaker, causing everyone to stop in their tracks. Attention! Attention! The Great Todoroki Shrine race is about to begin. The excitement in the announcer's voice was infectious as it spread through the crowd like wildfire. People pushed and jostled to get a better view of the starting line, eager to see the runners representing their families. And then, amidst the chaos, a name was called out. Running for the Wasabi family, Idate Morino. The cheers that erupted from the crowd were deafening, as many of the town folk had placed their bets on him. With a determined look on his face, Idate Morino stepped up to the starting line, ready to give it his all and bring glory to his family. running for the Wagarashi family, AKNIHIKYAKUYA. Many of the Wagarashi followers cheered for him. Runners, take your mark. The announcer's booming voice echoed through the crowd, sending chills down the spines of the two athletes. With their adrenaline pumping, they stepped up to the starting line, their eyes fixed on the large gate in front of them. As they prepared themselves to run, the salty sea breeze whipped through their hair, reminding them of the upcoming challenge. But just as the runners were about to take off, the large harbor doors slowly opened to reveal their boats still on the dock. Idate, one of the runners, couldn't help but feel a pang of worry. He had to win this race to bring glory to the Wasabi family. As Idate struggled to push aside his doubts, he noticed a gathering of clouds on the horizon. His heart sank as he realized what he had to do. With the sound of the starter's whistle, the tension mounted as the two runners stood poised and ready, their eyes fixed on the boats. "Get set," shouted the starter, and the runners crouched low, coiled like springs, their muscles taut and ready to explode into action. And then, with a thunderous, "Go!" from the starter, the runners unleashed their pent-up energy and sprinted forward at breakneck speed, their feet pounding the ground with a rhythmic beat as they raced towards their boats, determined to leave each other in their wake. With every stride, they pushed themselves harder, their lungs burning with exertion, their hearts pounding in their chests, and their eyes fixed on the prize that awaited them at the end of the race. "That's our Q2. Let's gee what the..." In a shocked voice, confused and concerned, they all turned to see Idate, suddenly veering off to the left instead of heading towards the ships as planned. His sudden change in direction left the group feeling uneasy and unsure of what to do next. They exchanged worried glances before hesitantly following Idate, hoping that he knew what he was doing and that their mission would still be successful. Ino's voice echoed through the forest as she yelled out in frustration, "What is that idiot doing?" Her eyes were fixed on Idate's retreating figure as he dashed through the trees, with Team 10 hot on his heels. The rustling of leaves and the sound of footsteps filled the air as they chased after him, their eyes trained on the target. Suddenly, Choji's voice boomed out, surprising everyone, "Idate. Where are you going? The boat is that way." His face was red with exertion as he pointed towards the sea, where their boat was docked. The urgency in his voice made it clear that they needed to catch up with Idate before he got away. Shikamaru, their captain, looked at his team with a calm expression on his face and said, "Guys, let's just follow him for now. He might know what he's doing." Ino, who was always quick to jump to conclusions, hesitated before asking, "Are you sure?" However, Shikamaru's confidence in his decision and his ability to assess the situation made his team trust him implicitly. His laid-back demeanor and strategic mind had always been the backbone of their team, and they knew that he had a plan up his sleeve. With a nod of agreement, they followed their captain. "Idate may be a prick, but he's completely loyal to Joriko-san. He won't do anything to let him down. For now, we just follow him and make sure he's safe. I just hope my hunch is right," Shikamaru said with hope in his voice. "I hope so too, Shikamaru," Ino said, her voice tinged with frustration. "Because if we fail this mission, it's not just our reputation on the line. It's Joriko-san's life. And I swear, if Idate messes this up, I'll kill him myself." Shikamaru couldn't help but smile at Ino's fierce determination. "Don't worry. If we do, I'll help you," Shikamaru said with a soft smile to his blonde friend. The genin trio then proceeded to trail the Wasabi family runner, keeping a watchful eye on him from a safe distance. As they followed him through the forest, they couldn't help but wonder whether he was still participating in the competition or if he was trying to escape from something. Kumo team. Omoi's eyes narrowed, studying the dust clouds in the distance as he turned to his captain, his voice laced with suspicion, "Where do you think they went?" Naruto followed Omoi's gaze, observing the Konoha team's peculiar behavior. Their ship was docked just a few yards away, yet the team had abruptly altered their course, heading towards an unknown destination. Naruto's attention was fixated on the Rain Village shinobi, that were on the same ship as him. As he watched their every move, he couldn't help but wonder why they were even there in the first place. With a furrowed brow, Naruto's thoughts raced as he tried to piece together the puzzle that was the other shinobi team. He was particularly curious about the identity of one of the Rain Village shinobi, a man named Aoi, whose name had been brought up in conversation before. Naruto knew keeping a close eye on the group was vital. He couldn't afford to let his guard down. Aoi was classified as a missing nin A-rank shinobi of Konoha because he had somehow stolen the lightning blade of the second Hokage, which was nothing to scoff at. Still, Naruto didn't understand why the Wagarashi family had hired them and Aoi from the hidden rain village. Naruto's muscles tensed up, his fists clenched tightly as he watched the shinobi from the rain village with suspicion. He didn't like the situation one bit, and his unease was evident to his fellow comrades, Yugito and Omoi. They both understood the gravity of the situation and knew they had to keep a close eye on the shinobi from the rain village, who had a reputation for being as strong as a Jonin. Naruto turned to Omoi with a stern look and said, "That's not important to us, Omoi. Our job is to protect Acne until the race is finished. We fight only if the Konoha teams fight back." His words were clear and concise, leaving no room for argument or hesitation. With a sense of duty and responsibility, he urged his team to remain focused and vigilant, assuring them that he would not let any harm come to Acne under his watchful eye. As Omoi stood on the deck, he nodded in understanding at the captain's orders and watched as the crew diligently prepared the ship for their next destination in the ongoing race. With every sail raised and every rope tightened, the ship soon left the dock and began its journey across the vast ocean. The sea was calm and peaceful, with the gentle waves lulling the crew into a sense of serenity. As far as the eye could see, there wasn't a single sign of any impending storm, and Omoi felt a sense of relief wash over him as he settled into his role on the ship. With the salty breeze blowing through his hair and the sun shining down on his face, Omoi knew this adventure would be one for the books. The members of Team Kumo decided to take a break and rest their legs. With the creaking of the wooden vessel and the salty ocean breeze as their backdrop, they made their way to the center of the ship, where they found a spacious area with a smooth wooden floor. As they sat down, the planks groaned under their weight, but they didn't mind. They were happy to be off their feet, and the coolness of the wood brought a welcome relief to their tired bodies. They leaned their backs against the wall, feeling the rough texture of the wood and the gentle swaying of the ship. The sound of the waves against the hull was a soothing lullaby, and they closed their eyes, savoring the peace and tranquility of the moment. The atmosphere was tense as Team Kumo's senses were running high, their nerves on edge, and their eyes scanning the rain team. They knew they were being watched, and the way Aoi and his 3 genins from the rain village were eyeing them made their skin crawl. The intensity of their stares made it seem as if Team Kumo was carrying a hefty price tag on their necks, just waiting to be collected by the highest bidder. He looked up to see Aoi swaggering toward him with a wide grin that made Naruto's blood boil. His annoyance only intensified as he heard the floorboards creaking beneath Aoi's feet as if the arrogant ninja was deliberately trying to provoke him. Without a second thought, Naruto sprang to his feet, his hand instinctively reaching for the hilt of his trusty blade. He knew better than to underestimate Aoi's cunning, and he was ready to defend himself if necessary. As Aoi drew closer, Naruto's grip on his sword tightened, his eyes narrowing in anticipation of any sudden moves. Now, he said, with a sly grin on his face, "There's no need for that. We are allies here. We are friends." He lifted his hands in surrender, indicating that he meant no harm, before his gaze shifted to Naruto. At that moment, Aoi's eyes fared to the pommel of his sword, which he held firmly in his grip. As the ship sailed further towards the island, Naruto's eyes narrowed in suspicion as he pondered why Aoi was on the ship. "Maybe," he replied coolly, his voice laced with caution. The ominous dark clouds gathering in the sky above only added to his unease, as he knew all too well that they signaled a storm's imminent arrival. Despite the impending danger, Naruto remained focused on the matter at hand, his attention fixed on the task of navigating their vessel safely to shore. With a resolute gaze, he turned his attention back to Aoi and asked, "What do you want?" His tone was firm yet tinged with a hint of curiosity as he awaited their response. "What are your names?" Aoi questioned, with a sly smirk on his face, his eyes scanning Naruto and his friends with a mischievous glint. The group exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of whether to trust him, but Aoi's wide confidence and mocking bow of his head left them with little choice. Naruto wondered what his game was but figured no harm in saying their names. Naruto, Yugito, and Omoi, Naruto answered without missing a beat, excluding their last names intentionally. Aoi's eyes narrowed slightly as if he was trying to discern the reason behind Naruto's deliberate omission. Despite Aoi's skepticism, Naruto remained composed and unfazed, as if he had nothing to hide. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he noticed Aoi's gaze lingering on him longer than necessary. The blonde-haired ninja shifted his weight, his hand instinctively moving toward the hilt of his katana. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Naruto's tone was firm, his voice carrying a hint of warning. His thumb slowly moved the guard of his katana upwards, revealing the sharp blade that lay beneath the scabbard. The glint of steel caught Aoi's eye, and he took a step back, realizing the danger he had unknowingly put himself in. Naruto's intense glare didn't waver as he spoke again, his words laced with irritation. "Never seen a blonde before." It was clear that Naruto was not one to be underestimated, especially when defending his friends. Aoi's gaze lingered upon Naruto before breaking into a small sly smile. "You know what? Nothing. You just remind me a lot of Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage of Konoha. I mean, seriously, you look identical to him, from the spiky blonde hair down to the whisker marks on your cheeks, and you look nothing like the Raikage." He spoke in a tone that was almost reverent, as if he was speaking about a hero. As Naruto in front of him looked at him quizzically, Aoi shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. "Look nothing like the Raikage." Naruto repeated the words bitterly in his head. He knew that, everyone told him that, and Naruto didn't like to admit that it bothered him more than he liked to admit. Aoi rolled his eyes and let out a sigh. His frustration was evident in his voice. "But whatever," he muttered under his breath, "I just want to let you know that if the Konoha shinobi shows up, our duty is to stop them from harming Acne." He spoke with a tone that was both authoritative and condescending, as if he was addressing a group of children rather than another team of shinobi. Aoi turned around, ready to depart, when Naruto's voice suddenly reached his ears, causing him to pause in his tracks. "Their duty is to protect their runner, and ours is to protect Acne. If they don't become hostile, then we shouldn't care what they do." Naruto spoke, with an authoritative voice, sending shivers down Aoi's spine, but he refused to show fear in front of a child. Aoi, the seasoned ninja, felt his eyebrow twitch involuntarily as he watched the group of inexperienced genins standing before him, their eyes filled with youthful exuberance and a hint of defiance. He couldn't help but feel annoyed that these young warriors, who were as green as the grass beneath their feet, were daring to disobey his commands. His gaze shifted to Naruto, who was cautiously looking at him, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of frustration at the young ninja's lack of respect for his authority. Despite his irritation, Aoi remained composed, his eyes scanning the group as he considered his next move. The serene and calm atmosphere was suddenly disrupted as the dark and ominous clouds gathered on the horizon, signaling that a storm was fast approaching. The once placid sea started to churn and froth, and the ship began to sway from side to side, caught in the ferocity of the tempestuous waves. The sound of the roaring wind and pounding rain drowned out all other noises, and Naruto and his teammates quickly sprang into action, determined to prevent the ship from capsizing and falling into the unforgiving depths of the ocean. They worked tirelessly, their muscles straining and their clothes soaked through, as they battled against the tremendous force of nature. As the tempestuous storm raged on, Naruto and his teammates battled the fierce gusts of wind that threatened to throw them off balance. The heavy rain poured down relentlessly, drenching them to the bone and leaving them shivering in the cold. After what seemed like an eternity, the storm finally subsided, leaving behind a trail of destruction and chaos. As they looked around, they noticed that the ship's deck was still covered in a thin layer of water, making it treacherous and slippery to navigate. However, Yugito came to their rescue. She used her powers to warm and dry their clothes, providing much-needed relief from the dampness and chill. Still, their little resting moment ended when Acne shouted at the top of his lungs. "They're catching up to us." As the sound of waves crashing against the wooden hull of their ship echoed around them, Acne's voice pierced the chaotic atmosphere, alerting Naruto to the looming danger ahead. With a sense of urgency, he swiftly turned his gaze in the direction of Acne's pointed finger, only to see the shadowy outline of an enemy vessel rapidly approaching theirs. Naruto couldn't help but feel a twinge of admiration for the Konoha team. "Stop them now." Naruto and his teammates immediately halted in their tracks, turning to face Acne with a mix of shock and confusion. However, their faces quickly contorted into expressions of anger and frustration, especially Yugito, known for her fiery temper. The air around them seemed to crackle with tension as the group exchanged glances, silently communicating their shared annoyance at Acne's sudden order. Our mission is to protect you, not to engage with Konoha shinobi. Naruto reminded him with narrowed eyes. His clear refusal to do the job didn't sit well with Acne, who could feel his frustration and anger brewing inside him as he struggled to come to terms with Naruto's unyielding refusal to comply with his demands. His eyes widened in disbelief before he finally exploded with fury, unleashing a torrent of words that echoed throughout the ship and reverberated in Naruto's ears. Do I need to remind you that you're hired, shinobi? What I say goes, Acne continued, his tone leaving no room for argument. Your job is to follow orders, not to question them, so either do what I say, or Lord Wagarashi will claim your mission as a failure. The threat hung in the air like a noose, and Naruto could feel the weight of it bearing down on him. Acne's triumphant smile formed on his face as he surveyed the ship, relishing the power he held over the Kumo team. Naruto narrowed his eyes, knowing that having a failure mission wouldn't sit well with his father, and their reputation as a Kumo team would be damaged if they failed missions. He had always believed in doing what was right, even if it meant going against orders or risking his own life. But as Acne's words rang in his ears, he realized that sometimes, in order to survive, you had to put your own moral compass aside and focus on the task at hand. It was a difficult pill to swallow, but Naruto knew that if he wanted to succeed as a ninja, he would have to learn to follow orders without question. It wasn't just about bringing in more income for the village, although that was certainly a motivator. It was about protecting his loved ones, his comrades, and his home. Still, the idea of doing something against his beliefs didn't sit well with him. He wondered how many other ninjas were struggling with the same dilemma, how many were sacrificing their own morals for the sake of their jobs. It was a sobering thought, but one that Naruto knew he would have to come to terms with if he wanted to be a successful shinobi. Yugito's voice trembled with anger as she confronted Acne, her eyes blazing with fury. You think we are going to obey you? She questioned fiercely, disdainfully eyeing him from head to toe. Acne, who had been exuding an air of confidence despite the dire situation they were in, suddenly began to tremble uncontrollably at Yugito's words. As he looked up at her, his face slowly drained of color, his eyes wide with fear. Yugito's eyes began to transform, swirling into an eerie resemblance to the piercing gaze of Matabi, the two-tailed cat. As she prepared to strike, her nails elongated into razor-sharp claws, glinting menacingly in the dim light. Her target, Acne, was about to feel the full force of her wrath. As she was about to strike, however, Naruto's hand shot out and landed firmly on her shoulder, halting her in her tracks. He knew they were there to defend, not to attack, and he wasn't about to let her forget it. Very well, Naruto declared confidently as he gazed at his teammates, his eyes flaring with determination. Yugito and Omoi, we will deal with them. His voice was firm and resolute, leaving no room for argument or hesitation. However, as he spoke, he couldn't help but notice the look of disbelief on Yugito's face. It was as if she couldn't believe his words, and Naruto understood why. He knew his teammates didn't want to do this, but this was how missions worked. It was their duty to follow orders, regardless of how difficult or challenging they might be. After all, a healthy shinobi who couldn't bring anything to the village was considered a liability, and Naruto was determined to ensure that his team was not a liability. Yes, Captain. As Naruto commanded his team to follow him, Omoi and Yugito quickly obeyed, shouting out their acknowledgement to their captain. With a swift leap, Naruto jumped from the ship's main deck, and with the power of chakra coursing through his feet, he and his teammates were able to traverse the vast and unforgiving surface of the sea with ease. As they began to pick up speed and sprint towards their destination, the Konoha ship, the wind whipped through their hair, and the salty spray of the ocean misted their faces, but nothing could dampen their determination to complete their mission and return home triumphant. With the wind in his hair and his heart pounding, Naruto charged forward at breakneck speed toward the other ship. He could see the enemy team readying themselves for battle, throwing several shurikens in his direction, but with his ninja instincts kicking in, he deftly dodged each one with ease. With a swift jump, he landed on the enemy ship, his eyes immediately locking onto his enemy Shikamaru and Choji. The sound of the wind whipping through the ship's sails was the only thing that could be heard as Naruto, Yugito, and Omoi landed on the creaking wooden floor, their feet making a soft thud as they hit the deck. They stood side by side, their eyes scanning the Konoha team warily, ready for any unexpected attack. Naruto's eyes were sharp as he surveyed the surroundings, taking in the salty smell of the ocean and the distant cry of seagulls. Yugito's cat-like reflexes were on full display as she scanned the area with her keen senses, while Omoi's muscular frame exuded an air of quiet confidence, ready for whatever was to come. As the sound of the lapping waves filled the air, Naruto spoke with a monotone voice, devoid of any emotion. "Well, we met once again." He paused momentarily, taking a deep breath as the salty sea breeze caressed his face. Despite the calming effect of the ocean, there was still a palpable tension between the two teams, like a thick fog hanging in the air, impossible to ignore. It was a reunion that no one had anticipated nor desired, but fate had brought them back together nonetheless. Shikamaru's voice was laced with caution as he spoke. Indeed, Naruto was it. His eyes fared over to Ino, who had gone slightly pale and was now hiding behind him, trembling with fear. Choji, on the other hand, was glaring at the Kumo team, his fists clenched tightly. "We don't need to fight. How about we just go our separate ways?" he suggested, trying to defuse the situation before it got out of hand. He knew they were not here to fight, but the Kumo team seemed to be spoiling for a brawl. Shikamaru made sure to keep a wary eye on them, ready to act if necessary, but he didn't want to start a fight unnecessarily. Despite feeling remorseful about the situation, Naruto maintained a composed demeanor as he explained to the opposing team that their mission required them to stop the enemy's runner. "I apologize," he said, "but this is our mission." He continued to speak in a passive voice, not allowing himself to convey any hint of sadness, although inside, he knew all too well that his own team, just like their opponents, would not be surrendering anytime soon. Naruto understood the importance of completing their mission, and he was willing to do whatever it took to achieve victory. "If you give us date, then none of you will get hurt." Shikamaru's disappointment was palpable as he shook his head in response to the group's suggestion. "No, can't do. I'm afraid we have to do this the hard way." With a heavy sigh, he reached into his pouch and pulled out a sharp kunai, readying himself for the challenge ahead. Naruto, not one to be left behind, unsheathed his gleaming sword, the metal glinting in the sunlight. Alongside him, Yugito and Omoi followed suit as Naruto began to channel his lightning chakra into his blade. The air around them crackled with energy. With a cold and calculated tone, Naruto uttered the words, "It's not personal," as he moved towards the Konoha team with his sword held high. Naruto's demeanor remained stoic and unemotional. With each step he took, his eyes remained locked on his opponents, surveying their movements and anticipating their next move. As he reached his intended target, he lunged forward with lightning speed, his sword slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. "I apologize," he said, "but this is our mission." He continued to speak in a passive voice, not allowing himself to convey any hint of sadness, although inside, he knew all too well that his own team, just like their opponents, would not be surrendering anytime soon. Naruto understood the importance of completing their mission, and he was willing to do whatever it took to achieve victory. "If Idate gives up right now, then nothing needs to happen," Naruto suggested, despite knowing they wouldn't comply. Shikamaru's disappointment was palpable as he shook his head in response to the group's suggestion. "No, can't do. I'm afraid we have to do this the hard way." With a heavy sigh, he reached into his pouch and pulled out a sharp kunai, readying himself for the challenge ahead. Naruto, not one to be left behind, unsheathed his gleaming sword, the metal glinting in the sunlight. Alongside him, Yugito and Omoi followed suit as Naruto began to channel his lightning chakra into his blade. The air around them crackled with energy, the anticipation building as they steeled themselves for battle. With a cold and calculated tone, Naruto uttered the words, "It's not personal," as he moved towards the Konoha team with his sword held high. Despite the gravity of the situation and the intensity of the impending battle, Naruto's demeanor remained stoic and unemotional. With each step he took, his eyes remained locked on his opponents, surveying their movements and anticipating their next move. As he reached his intended target, he lunged forward with lightning speed, his sword slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. Shikamaru's quick reflexes and strategic mind allowed him to anticipate Naruto's deadly swing and jump back just in time to avoid the devastating blow. However, the sword was so close that it managed to slice through a few strands of his hair, leaving Shikamaru with a sense of unease as he realized just how close he had come to certain death. Despite the danger, Shikamaru remained calm and focused, analyzing Naruto's every move and plotting his next move with calculated precision. Choji and Ino stood there, their eyes wide open as they watched Naruto, standing 10 meters away, suddenly make a lightning-fast movement toward Shikamaru, attacking him in a blink of an eye. Naruto's movements were barely audible as he swooped in on Shikamaru. Still, the Nara had narrowly dodged the attack, leaving Choji and Ino gasping in amazement at the sheer speed and precision of Naruto's attack. It was as if Naruto had moved at the speed of light, his body a blur as he launched himself towards Shikamaru, who was caught a little off guard by the sudden attack. As the dust cleared, Choji and Ino could hardly believe what they had just witnessed. Naruto had attacked Shikamaru in seconds, leaving them stunned and speechless. As Ino approached Naruto with a firm hold on her kunai, her mind raced with thoughts of how she would strike him from behind. Unbeknownst to her, Yugito had already sensed her presence, and before she could make her move, a swift and powerful kick landed squarely on her stomach, sending her hurtling through the air and crashing against a sturdy wooden wall. Ino's body thudded against the rough surface before tumbling down onto the ship's main deck, her kunai clattering from her hand as she struggled to catch her breath and regain her composure. Ino's eyes widened in terror as she gasped for air, struggling to regain her breath after being kicked in the stomach and falling to the ground, her body now sprawled out on the hard wooden floor. The searing pain in her midsection made it difficult for her to move, but she forced herself to look up and face her attacker. As she lifted her head, she saw Yugito walking towards her with a menacing stride, her right hand clutching a gleaming sword that glinted dangerously in the sunlight. Ino's heart raced as she realized that she was in grave danger, and she knew that she needed to act fast if she wanted to survive this deadly encounter. As Ino lay on the wooden floor writhing in pain from Yugito's vicious kick to her stomach, she couldn't help but wonder why Yugito hadn't gone for the kill. After all, she had her sword at her side. However, despite the searing pain that shot through her gut with every breath, Ino refused to stay down. With a deep breath, she mustered all the courage she had left, pushing herself up to her feet and glaring defiantly at her opponent. Though her body was battered and bruised, her spirit remained unbroken, and she was determined to fight on. As Yugito kept moving forward toward Ino with a sense of caution, her mind was racing with thoughts about her opponent's abilities. She couldn't help but wonder about Ino's arsenal of jutsus and how she could use them to her advantage. As she approached Ino, she couldn't help but think about the Yamanaka clan's signature technique, which allowed them to take control of an opponent's body with ease. Yugito knew Ino was a Yamanaka. Her best jutsu would undoubtedly be mind transfer jutsu. Yugito, being a diligent and knowledge-seeking ninja, had spent countless hours poring over scrolls and researching the unique and powerful jutsus of each of the clans that existed within the vast expanse of ninja villages. Among the many intriguing jutsus that had piqued her interest, Yugito had become particularly fascinated with the Yamanaka clan's mind transfer jutsu, which was known to be a formidable and dangerous technique that allowed the user to enter and control the minds of their opponents. Despite its potency, however, Yugito was not one to underestimate the power of her own abilities. She possessed Matabi, which served as her protector and shielded against any would-be mind invaders. Thanks to this powerful ally, Yugito knew that even the most skilled users of mind transfer jutsus would be rendered powerless against her, for she was a Jinchuriki and had access to the impenetrable mind barrier jutsus that made her an invincible force to be reckoned with. Ino, fueled by determination and adrenaline, rose swiftly to her feet, clasping her trusty kunai tightly in her hand. With a fierce battle cry, she charged toward her opponent, Yugito, unleashing a flurry of quick and calculated swings. Each attack was aimed with precision and power as Ino relentlessly attempted to strike her adversary with her sharp blade. However, Yugito proved to be a formidable opponent, moving with a fluid grace that made Ino's attacks appear sluggish and clumsy in comparison. Despite Ino's best efforts, Yugito evaded each of her strikes with ease, as if she could predict every move Ino would make before it even happened. Just stay still, Ino growled, her eyes narrowed in frustration as she tried to slash Yugito with her kunai knife. However, the nimble cat-like ninja effortlessly dodged every single one of Ino's desperate swings, her lithe form moving with the grace and precision of a seasoned warrior. With a quiet confidence that belied her youth, Yugito danced around Ino's clumsy attacks, her sharp senses attuned to every subtle shift in the air as she prepared to counterstrike. When we first met, you asked me how I got this beautiful body. Tell me, how would your beauty help you in this situation? Yugito questioned with a sneer, grabbing her wrist in a tight grip. The force of Yugito's knee hitting Ino's stomach caused her to double over involuntarily, her body convulsing as she spat saliva onto the ground. Ino's breath came in short gasps, her chest heaving as she tried to in as much air as possible, but Yugito wasn't done yet. With lightning-quick reflexes, Yugito sprang into action and seized Ino by the throat, hoisting her up into the air with ease. Ino's eyes widened in terror as she struggled to break free, frantically throwing punches at Yugito's hand in a desperate attempt to escape, but to no avail. In a swift and brutal reprisal, Yugito retaliated with a vicious punch to Ino's delicate features, causing her nose to spurt blood like a burst dam. Writhing in agony, Ino let out a piercing scream as pain racked her entire body, her stomach clenching with searing agony. Yugito's piercing words echoed in Ino's mind, "You should have thought of this before you became a kunoichi," as her body hit the ground with a thud, completely at Yugito's mercy. Ino's vision blurred as she struggled to move, feeling her consciousness slipping away. She could taste the metallic tang of blood in her mouth, and her nose throbbed with intense pain. As she lay there, helpless and defeated, she couldn't help but wonder if becoming a kunoichi was truly worth it. The training, the pain, the sacrifice, was it all for nothing? Ino knew she had to pick herself up, dust off the dirt, and prove to Yugito that she was not just some dead weight. "Stand down, Yamanaka," Yugito ordered with a commanding tone, her voice echoing across the ship's deck, as she turned her attention back to Omoi and Naruto, who were both engrossed in their tasks. Omoi was fiercely battling the chubby adversary, his blade clashing against the enemy's fists with a metallic clang, while Naruto was deeply engrossed in a serious conversation with Shikamaru, his brows furrowed in concentration. As Yugito's sharp eyes scanned the ship, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease creeping up on her as she searched for any sign of idate. The sound of the waves crashing against the wooden beams and the creaking of the ship's hull filled the air, adding to the tension that hung thickly around them. Yugito could feel the ship swaying gently beneath her feet as she made her way through the main deck, her eyes scanning the doors for any sign of the captain's room. As she approached the door that she suspected to be the captain's room, she heard the soft sound of footsteps behind her. Turning her head, she saw Ino standing there, her legs trembling as she struggled to finish the intricate hand signs of her jutsu. With a fierce determination, she unleashed her powerful, mind transfer jutsu, shouting the incantation with all the strength she could muster. The technique crackled with energy as it surged towards her opponent, Yugito, who stood ready to counter the attack. As the mind transfer jutsu hit Yugito's body, she felt a sudden jolt of soft pain surge through her brain, causing her to grimace and clench her teeth. With a soft, almost inaudible murmur, Yugito whispered, "This was a mistake," her words ringing loudly enough for Ino to hear. At that moment, the world around them seemed to spin out of control as both Yugito and Ino's bodies went completely numb, their limbs no longer responding to their commands. They toppled over onto the hard, unforgiving wooden floor, their bodies crumpling like rag dolls as they fell, their eyes closed, and their breathing shallow. It was as if they had both suddenly lost consciousness. Ino expected to take control over Yugito's body, but instead, she was entirely elsewhere. Ino's heart pounded as she opened her eyes to find herself in the midst of a dense forest, and as she took a deep breath, she questioned out loud, "Where am I?" Her voice echoed through the trees, but there was no response, only an eerie silence that sent shivers down her spine. Ino tried to make sense of her surroundings, but the forest seemed almost endless, with trees stretching as far as her eyes could see. However, what unsettled her the most was the lack of sound. There were no chirping birds, rustling leaves, or even the sound of the wind. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Ino's heart raced as she stood frozen in fear, listening intently to the sound of heavy footsteps growing louder and closer. The ground beneath her feet trembled with each step, sending shockwaves through her body as if an enormous beast was slowly approaching her from behind. Ino's heart pounded in her chest as she suddenly whirled around, her footsteps echoing in the forest. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw a towering figure before her. It was a massive cat, standing at an astounding 65 meters tall, with two tails that swished back and forth in the air. Its body seemed to be made entirely of blue flames, the fairing light casting eerie shadows across the forest. The cat's eyes were mismatched, one a piercing green and the other a bright yellow, and its long, sharp fangs glinted in the dim light. Ino felt a shiver run down her spine as she stared up at the majestic creature, wondering what it could possibly want from her. Ino's heart raced as she watched in terror as the enormous creature before she opened its mouth, revealing razor-sharp teeth that glistened in the moonlight like swords, each one bigger than Ino herself. At that moment, Ino knew she was in deep trouble. Matabi ate her lips hungrily, her eyes fixed on the small prey before her. "It seems that Kitty has brought me dinner," she purred before lunging forward with her jaws wide open, ready to devour Ino whole. The sound of Matabi's approaching footsteps became louder and louder until they were the only thing Ino could hear. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for the inevitable impact as the world around her seemed to slow down to a crawl. Single quote. As Yugito slowly opened her eyes, she felt the weight of the world around her dissipate as she transitioned from the dreamy realm of her subconscious back to the real world. The sky above her was painted with a canvas of clouds, each one unique in shape and size. As she lay there, taking in the beauty of the sky, she suddenly heard a blood-curdling scream pierce the air. Her attention was immediately drawn to Ino, who was writhing on the wooden floor in a fit of uncontrollable movements. As Ino gradually opened her eyes, her heart raced with fear, and her mind was clouded with confusion, unsure of what had just happened. She let out a heavy sigh of relief as she finally realized that she was back in the real world. Her chest heaved up and down as she struggled to calm her racing heart, and her hands shook uncontrollably as she tried to steady her nerves. The memory of the creature inside Yugito's mind still lingered in her thoughts, causing her to shiver involuntarily. As Ino lay on her back, staring up at the sky above her, she heard the sound of approaching footsteps echoing through the ship. Turning her head to the right, she caught a glimpse of Yugito, who was marching towards her with an intense scowl etched on her face. Ino's heart pounded with fear as she desperately crawled backward on her hands and feet, her eyes wide with terror as Yugito relentlessly advanced toward her. "Get away from me!" she screamed at the top of her lungs, her voice laced with panic and desperation. She could feel the cold sweat trickling down her spine, and her breath came in short, ragged gasps as she struggled to put some distance between herself and the relentless predator who was closing in on her. Despite Ino's desperate pleas, Yugito showed no sign of stopping, her eyes fixed on her prey with a cold, unyielding determination that sent shivers down Ino's spine. Ino's heart was pounding as she frantically crawled backward, desperately trying to escape the clutches of her enemy. However, her efforts were in vain as she suddenly hit a wooden wall with her back, leaving her completely exposed and vulnerable. The realization that she could no longer hide, coupled with the fear that had been slowly creeping up on her, caused a sudden jolt of terror to course through her body, rendering her completely immobile from tip to toe. Her eyes widened with panic as she saw the glint of sunlight reflecting off the sword that Yugito was holding, leaving her with no doubt that her end was near. The sword was a beautiful yet deadly weapon that seemed to mock her as she lay there helpless, awaiting her inevitable demise. The sound of Yugito's footsteps grew louder and louder, signaling that her time was running out. Ino was left shaken to the core as a sudden flash of her own demise played out in her mind's eye. The vivid image depicted a gruesome scene in which she was the victim of a vicious attack by none other than Yugito, the thought of whom sent shivers down her spine. Her imagination conjured up the chilling sight of a sharp blade slicing through her delicate throat and the subsequent feeling of her lifeless body plummeting into the unforgiving depths of the ocean, never to be found again. Ino's body was racked with fear, and she could feel every nerve in her being trembling uncontrollably. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to shake off the terrifying image that had taken hold of her mind, but her body refused to listen, locked in a state of perpetual panic. Her eyes squeezed shut so tightly that it felt like her eyelids were about to burst, tears streaming down her face like a waterfall. It was then that Yugito appeared before her, a menacing figure with a sword raised high above her head, ready to strike at any moment. Yugito stood tall, her voice calm and collected as she gazed down at Ino with a piercing stare, causing the ship to fall silent. "Any last words?" she questioned with a passive voice, eyes scanning Ino's face for any sign of weakness. Ino's heart raced as she struggled to find the words to speak, but fear had seized her body, rendering her completely immobile. She tried to move her fingers to voice her thoughts, but her body refused to cooperate. As Yugito swung her sword down, the sound of the blade slicing through the air was the only noise that filled the ship. Ino's heart pounded with fear as she stood frozen, expecting the worst. With a blood-curdling scream, she braced herself for the impact of the blade piercing her skull, but to her surprise, the sword plunged into the wooden floor beside her. The force of the impact sent shivers down Ino's spine as she realized how close she had come to death. For a moment, the ship was silent except for the sound of. Thanks for listening. In the next part. In the meantime, please leave a review, I would love to hear your feedback. Especially if it helps me improve the overall story.